Well, welcome back. This is the third of three videos exploring Wheeler's chapter 6 from his book on risk management. What we're going to be doing here is looking at sensitivity and then taking all of these ideas and move them out of a 3-level mapping into a 5-level mapping. I referenced it in the last video as taking it to a level of steroids. So let's see how this all works. What we've got on this particular table, table 6.10, is we've got your traditional mapping of severity and likelihood. And what we've done is expanded likelihood and included every possible mapping of sensitivity. So low, moderate, and high. And we've mapped it all out so that you create this kind of a chart over in that far right column that ranges from low on the top through a band of moderate to a bottom right corner of high. Can you see that? And so this allows you to then focus on those things that are in those kind of 5 high areas as the first initiatives that you want to look at in terms of risk exposure. But you know you can take and make this even better. And one of the ways of doing that is, first of all, you can't do everything. You're going to have to triage what you're looking at. You're not going to be able to test every possible outcome. You've got to just focus on the most critical ones. But what you can do is make this where it's quick, it's accurate, it's consistent, it's repeatable. And you keep doing this over and over again, and you rapidly move through and get large chunks of the organization done. Now, it's not going to be as precise as quantitative, but as you saw in the last lesson, that was probably about 3 videos ago, quantitative is hard to do. It takes much more time to knock out. And so you will find a lot of people will work towards qualitative analysis, but do it in the form of tables rather than just making stuff up. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to take severity and move it to a new level. We're going to add a 4th level called critical. All right? And then the idea is expanding that so that we have some differentiation between high and critical, because what will happen if you use a 3-tier system, you're just going to find too many things in the high category. You're not going to be able to do them all. So you need a further delineation of those using severity so that you can get your risk exposure down to a smaller amount of different threat vulnerability pairs that you're going to actually deal with. All right, so this is what a 4 level scale might look like. And again, what you've done is you've just remapped these a little bit to have greater definitions around severity. So you've got a deviation, but no direct exposure, indirect contribution, limited access, and then full access as a result of these 4 tiers. Here's an example of this. So let's say that you've got a regional bank with a web portal for online banking, and that's hosted by a third party. So you've got a web portal, it's online banking, hosted by a third party. And you've got these kind of 5 things that come up as potential vulnerabilities. So you've got a weakness in the web form that could allow for the website to be defaced. That's going to be some reputational damage. Storage limits force retention of client financial transactions for only 1 day. Okay, so that's going to be a challenge on accountability. Hosting service does not use an independent third-party audit. That's a kind of trust me situation. Default admin passwords are used to manage server configurations. What? No, don't do it. Just run away. That's a serious issue. Customer accounts are manually set up for portal access, resulting in data disclosure between customers occasionally. It's still data disclosure. That's not good either. So how would you map this in? What would each of these look like? And I would suggest that first one, the reputational damage for a bank that does online banking, probably high. Okay, it's a short disruption of service or denial of service for part of the community. It's still pretty serious. That second one, the transactions for only 1 day, degradation, it's really an accountability issue, but you still got 1 day of data. You just got to catch these things as they go along. Not using a third-party audit function, that's low. It's a deviation from recommended practice. admin passwords, that's critical. That's just crazy. So maybe we need a new category, critical crazy. But that's crazy. And so, but that's a critical shortcoming that needs to be addressed immediately. And then that manual setup is going to affect, it could lead to a short disruption of service and part of the user committee. Kind of makes sense. So that's how those would map into, if you will, this particular scenario as you're looking at examples. All right, let's move on. Why don't we take likelihood, and we're going to add 2 levels to this. Not 1, but 2, negligible and very high. Okay? And again, you can see a series of questions that you might ask that help narrow this down, and you see how we've mapped this in to a scale. So that very high means it's pretty easy. Even if you've got casual use of information on the web, you can find this weakness. Okay, where negligible means it's a very small, trusted, you got controls in place, so you got to have physical access or significant insider knowledge, or it's just purely theoretical. All right, kind of cool. There are other questions that you can ask as you're going through this. Part of this may be, you know, do you have to authenticate? Does it affect servers and desktops? How widely developed? You know, and you've got this kind of normal mapping. Is this really a fringe case, or is this something that's really a likely attack? Well, when you start to map all of this in, you start to get a pretty detailed chart here. And here, again, you see the same format that we used before. We took that likelihood and severity and mapped it to a 3-4 scale, or I'm sorry, a 4-5 scale. And here's another mapping where we've got likelihood, severity, and we've moved risk sensitivity into it. And here you can see it's ranging from that kind of low through the moderate to the high to the critical, all the way down there. And you can see the impact of having that negligible setting over in the likelihood scale. So it gets more complex, but what it allows you to do is to further differentiate your types of threat vulnerabilities that are out there, and then place them and then allow you to focus on absolutely those most critical things that are ongoing within the organization. All right, so quantitative analysis. Not going to talk about this a lot because we did this. We talked about this last lesson. We talked about this back in Chapter 5, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Instead, I'm going to finish up and say what a great chapter. We've covered Chapter 6. We've talked about qualitative measurement as it relates to risk exposure. We've walked through some simple 3-level charts looking at severity, likelihood, and sensitivity. We then moved that to 4-level and 5-level charts. I have not seen 6 yet. And the reason why we did is we needed that further delineation to allow us to identify those things that are really like the default passwords. That are really the most critical things going on within an organization, so that we address those first, then we move into the high, then we move into the moderate, then we move into the low. As you can see, there's a lack of precision with this, but that precision gives you speed, repeatability. It gives you the ability to do this in the same way over and over again, and very quickly do these mappings and do it in such a way that you can make a real benefit to your organization. Most organizations I work in use qualitative, not quantitative. Just hard to do. So that brings us to the end of the third of 3 videos looking at Wheeler's most excellent book on risk management. What we're going to be doing during the next set of videos is moving into Chapter 7 and looking at all sorts of really cool stuff associated with security control principles. So keep on studying, keep on learning. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.